Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be breaking down this two-game NBA slate on Wednesday here. Nice games last night. Damian Lillard, buzzer beater, the best buzzer beater that I've probably seen in a meaningful game ever since his last one. Fifth one ever to end the series. That one was just disgusting. If you haven't seen it, go and see it. So welcome to the channel. What I do here is I cover daily fantasy sports in the NBA, NFL, MLB a little bit, golf a little bit, in all those streets, right? So we're going to break it down, give you as much overwhelming value as possible, have you come here, join the community. The Discord is free, totally free. You go in there, you chat with other people who are interested in whatever DFS sport it might be, NASCAR, whatever it might be. We'll break down the injuries, which NBA is notorious for, right? But not so much now in the postseason. As you can see above me, the smallest injury list we have ever had, and I really had to stretch for this one just to get something on there. But it was on the report. And then we'll break down the target offense sheet, and I'll go through some of my early interest. There's only really viable players in play today in terms of guys going to get teens in minutes, 30, which is something that we normally don't see. And again, there's 4 teams, so about 7 guys, 8 guys from each team. So it makes sense. So in terms of the injury report, let's jump right down in it. Before we do this, if you can hit me with a thumbs up, I will be coming out with NFL content very soon, probably within the next week or two once graduation is over here at Penn State. I will be coming out with some more NFL off-season content in terms of just what I'm looking at going forward for full season NFL in terms of fantasy football. It's going to get a good reach, so why not make these videos, and I enjoy it. And then once the summer comes around for the preseason, we'll be covering that as well. So hit me with a thumbs up if you can. We're at around 3,700 subscribers, so if you can continue to just hit that, smash that likes button, hit the notification bell, subscribe if you have not already. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Drop down in the comments down below right now. Where do you think Paul George, now that the Thunder season is over, where do you think Paul George will be next year? Will he be with the Thunder still? Will he be with the Lakers? Will he be somewhere else? Will he be leading his own team, perhaps? Where do you think he will be? Personally, I believe he did not shoot the ball enough yesterday. I thought Russ, and I love Russ, he's an inefficient shooter. We've known that for years, but now that it's the playoffs, you have all these players getting scrutinized even more because they're actually being watched every single day, especially when they're playing in the best series, which has been this Trailblazers and Thunder series, although the series is 4-1 and over, and more than that, it's been closer than a 4-1 series. But Russ shot too much down the stretch. He is an inefficient shooter. Like I said, we know that. He should not, with up by 7 with 2 minutes to go, he should not be chucking threes, right? You should have anybody else on the team shooting those threes for the most part, outside of like Steven Adams. Give it to Jeremy Grant, give it to Paul George, give it to Ferguson, whoever it might be. They're going to be a more efficient shooter, to be honest. So let's just jump into it. 2-game slate here, 4 teams playing. Draymond Green, only thing on either team's injury report, he's probable with the wrist. There's not much more to it than that. These Warriors, they're starting 5. Are pretty stable, at least when they had Boogie Cousins. So now the other injury to mention, I guess if you really want to still, Boogie Cousins probably shut down for the playoffs. Andrew Bogut has been getting the starts and has been seeing 20 to 24 minutes. Whenever Bogut sees closer to the 24, 25, that's very valuable. He's a guy who's going to score over 1.1 fantasy points per minute as a center, and he has a spectacular matchup, which just raises that a little bit more. So Draymond Green being in will hurt Bogut a little bit, just in terms of Draymond will get some center minutes. Kevon Looney will get hurt as well, although he hasn't really been coming above 17, 18 minutes. Draymond being in should be stapled for his 36 minutes here. Let's just jump right into the target offense sheet. Maybe, just maybe, on a 2-game slate, I won't spend 40 minutes on the slate, but we'll see. That's what happened 2 or 3 days ago. Last night was really well. I said pretty much that my target for the slate was going to be to get as much Damian Lillard and Russell Westbrook as I could, and then try and find another pay-up spot, whether that be a Nikola Jokic, whether that be a Nikola Vucevic. I'm happy I didn't get to Vucevic. I ended up going for $7,500 to Siakam in one lineup, and I ended up getting to Jokic in another lineup, followed it up with a lot of dust. Hold on one second. Guy mowing the lawn out there coming by, yikes. So I ended up getting Siakam in the one lineup. I finished 3rd in the big tournament, and then I had another lineup that finished 120. I did not have the chance to get those into the 222, which is what I've been playing in the playoffs. A good amount, 500 person field, some nights at 750. That would have been my best finish in the 222. I imagine it would have been a top 20 finish. Unfortunately, I did not get that in there in time. The contest filled. But 2-game slate tonight, again, these 2-game slates are dreadful because you have to find the 2 to 3 plays that nobody else will find if you want to win all the money on your own, right? Now, if you're playing cash, sure, it's still very variant, but it's much easier because you don't have to rely on finding the guy who's going to play 16 minutes tonight and give you 20 fantasy points, right? You don't have to guess if it's going to be Thabo Sefolosha or if it's going to be Austin Rivers tonight, which are guys who sadly are in play on a 2-game slate. So yeah, let's just break down into this. So Golden State and LAC, Look, Golden State's up 3-1 in this series. I believe this is game 5, right? Yeah, so Golden State up 3-1, 14-point spread. Kevin Durant in the past 2 games has just been lighting it up. He came out in an interview and says he doesn't shoot 20 or 30 times. That's not his role in this offense. The past 2 games, he shot over 20 times each, and he's playing great, over 30 points in each of those games. We haven't seen that in a while out of KD on this team. It's playoff KD. We'll see if that can continue. I will note, and we'll get to it once we kind of cover the Vegas spreads and everything. So the pace, 105 pretty much, 104.91, very good pace. We've seen that throughout this series. That's been correlated with high totals, 235 total in this game, by far higher than this other game on the slate, and it's higher by 23 points. Golden State, team implied total of 124.5, 14 points higher than the Rockets, who are next highest in the slate, 110.5 for the Clippers. Again, Golden State 14-point favorites here to close it out at home, move on to the second round, get done with this first round series. There was somebody, I don't know why this man keeps watching my videos. He's like, I'm assuming he just needs help in DFS, which is all fair, but kept saying how, I thought you thought the Clippers were going to get swept by the Warriors, which by all accounts they should be by now, right? The Warriors blew a 31-point lead, but does it really matter if they lose in 5? But either way, he was like, why are you saying you have interest in Clippers players? Let's just get this on the table. The difference between the Clippers not beating the Warriors in the first round and me wanting to play Clippers because they are in a high-paced game and a high-total game, and they're cheap on specific slates when it's 3 and 4 game slates. There's a big difference there, and it's a pretty obvious difference. They're interesting to play for DFS and make me money. I would never bet on them to win a series here, and Vegas obviously shows that by them being like plus 1,000 or whatever the record has been now. So Golden State side of the ball, Draymond being back, I do like Draymond quite a bit at his price point. The price point has come down a little bit. Everybody's in play here. The hot Kevin Durant on back-to-back games, I tend to want to stay away from. Look, it's a 2-game slate. Everybody's going to be chalky, but I think KD garners more ownership. KD and Steph are pretty much negatively correlated. Unless the game stays really close, you're not going to see 50-point games out of KD and Steph. The problem is, in projection systems, they both grade out similarly because, again, it doesn't take into the fact that when one goes up, the other one goes down in most projection systems. Believe it or not, they both graded out at 50.75 fantasy points today for me. Do not play them both and expect to get that on most nights. That is when the game stays close, and they're the 2 guys contributing. Now, no Boogie Cousins all season long affected Steph the most, and I think people are going to forget that, 1, because it's the playoffs and people have short-term memories because this is the second season, and 2, because KD has been playing so well. Let's break down to KD playing so well a little bit. He has been taking a lot of shots, right? And rightfully so. 2 games ago, Steph got in foul trouble. He only played like 20 minutes. He still scored 30 fantasy points. He was averaging 1.5 fantasy points per minute. So he's been playing extremely well. The last game, he shot 1 of 9 from 3. So started to not play too well, but you really think Steph Curry is going to continue to shoot 1 of 9 from 3? I do not think so. He still put up 41 fantasy points. If he ends up shooting 4 of 9 from 3, which is much more in Steph Curry's wheelhouse, then you have Steph Curry scoring 50 fantasy points in that game, over 50 fantasy points in that game, and getting you there, and that probably takes away a little bit from just based on the fact that the game blew out, Kevin Durant. So I lean Steph Curry today. People are going to have a short-term memory and play KD because of his 2 back-to-back 50-point games. If you break down into Steph's numbers, he has been just as good. 2 games ago, foul trouble, only played 20 minutes instead of his normal 35. He was on pace for 50 by a wide margin. Last game, went 1 of 9 from 3. If that goes back to its average and doesn't even go above the average, he scores 50 points in that last game. So I'm going to lean Steph over KD. I will not be playing both of them. Although if you play both, it's probably a way to get a differentiated lineup, but I just won't be going there. So Golden State, heavy interest in Steph for me on a 2-game slate. I wish this was a 4-game slate because man's really going to be weed whacking outside right now. Hope it doesn't affect the video quality. But on a 4-game slate, I would be much more likely or much happier to be playing Steph today because loads of ownership will be going to Kevin Durant. Either way, today you're going to get ownership on KD and Steph. I imagine you get more on Durant. And just keep in mind that nugget. When Bogut Cousins has been out, Steph has been the biggest beneficiary. I do not believe these past 2 games have just suddenly flip that switch. I believe it's more so just the fact that KD got some negative feedback, and then Steph got in foul trouble and just didn't shoot well in the last game, and then it just ended up being KD's nights. So like I said, Draymond, Steph, I think Andrew Bogut is interesting at only $4,800, I believe. Look, if he's going to play 24 minutes today, and I have him projected, I think, for only 22, but if he gets you closer to that 24-minute mark, he's going to be a great play for a center spot. On a slate where the centers are all cheap. They're all very cheap. They're not the pay-up spots today. Your pay-up spots, and there's not many of them when there's 4 teams playing, Harden by a mile, then you have Steph or Clay and Steph, Clay. Then you have Steph and KD right there after that. And then it just kind of trickles all the way down. You get some Donovan Mitchell, and it's very cheap after that in the 6K range. So Golden State, Draymond, Steph, probably my priorities today, going to be fading, or at least not playing as much of KD as I have in the past 2 days. And I think that makes a lot of sense. In terms of Clay, you can throw a dart at him. I never know how to really judge Clay. There's no way to project Clay well because he has a ceiling that is uncapped if he just decides to go 7 of 10 from 3 tonight, or 10 of 12 like Damian Lillard did last night. Just absolutely ridiculous. But he can take over a game. If you're playing a ton of lineups, you obviously have a set number of Clay that you're playing. If you're playing one lineup, I probably just don't get to Clay. The Warriors that I'm going to be focusing on here, like I said, Steph, Draymond, and Bogut, probably in that order. After that, nothing really. I don't really want any Looney, although Looney is the type of guy on this type of slate when he's going to see 17 to 18 minutes. If he gets you 23, 24 fantasy points, he's probably a guy you need to have because on a 2-game slate, there's not going to be a lot of people doing that for you, especially on the cheaper end. So Looney, there's slight interest there for me. He's probably a great pivot off of Bogut. He has the direct leverage off of Bogut for the most part. So I will actually maybe tease around with some Looney and see what the lineups that I may come out looking like. The Clippers. Boy, the past 2 games, a lot of their stars have struggled. Montrezl Harrell, he was playing in the low 30s in minutes to mid 30s in minutes. The past 2 games hasn't even touched 30, partially because of blowouts, partially because he's just been getting bullied for the most part. Boogie Cousins going down might have been harmful for him, now having to face more Kevon Looney and Andrew Bogut. So that's been going bad, but here's the thing. He's been playing bad the past 2 games. That's the exact spot, especially on a 2-game slate where it's hard to get edges, that I like to jump on. Lou Williams has not been playing the greatest over the past 2 games. Look, it is a brutal matchup for him in terms of Clay and Steph, but he has been dominant in this matchup the far majority of the time. The past 2 games have not turned out so much that way. I do have a heavy interest in Lou Williams still. Obviously, Gallo is going to be playing his 35 minutes. He's going to be a fine play at 6,300. He's too cheap. $6,000 Montrezl Harrell, like we touched on. I do like him, and I like him because people are going to be zagging away from him, and that's when I want to zig. I want to zig when they zag and get as much leverage on players as you can. Again, Harrell today might be 35% on because it's a 2-game slate, but he should probably be 50% on a slate like this, so you're getting some sort of leverage. The cheaper guys on the Clippers, I mean, you have Pat Bev, you have Landry, you have Shamet. These aren't guys that I really want to get too much. You have SGA. I would get to SGA a little bit more because he is a point guard, so there's going to be more upside there. But in terms of Pat Bev, 4,400, sure, you could play it. I don't feel great about it. I think there's probably better options, and we'll get to them in the Rockets game. So yeah, it is going to be in this order, probably. Let's think about this for a second. Gallo is going to be your safest play. If you're playing cash, it's going to be Gallo on this team. But in terms of what I want to do here, I'm probably going to be going more towards a Montrezl Harrell, Lou Williams, and then Gallo in terms of tournaments, my interest levels, because people are going to be zagging away from them. Keep an eye on if JaMychal Green continues to start. Played 22 minutes in back-to-back games, started in the last game last second, and he's just been absolute dust. Keep an eye on that. I still have interest there, especially because he's been dust. And in 22 minutes, JaMychal Green can go 10-10, and at his price point, that's more than fair. Let's go over to Houston and Utah. So Houston 8-point favorites to close it out here. This would end pretty much the Western Conference for the most part, and much of the playoffs, if not all of the playoffs. Now that the Thunder lost last night, I'm trying to think. We just have the Spurs and the Nuggets going back for Game 6. Spurs down 3-2. So if tonight goes how Vegas predicts, we'll have 1 team left, which is pretty sad. I wish we got more basketball in the first round because then you get more DFS or nights of DFS. So 212.5 game implied total. Houston 110.25 total. Utah pretty sad, 102.25, the lowest on the slate by 8 points. That's really low. So let's start with the Houston side of the ball. Harden's the elephant in the room. He's 10-4. He's on a slate where there's nobody else with his type of ceiling. Yes, we saw Steph in this series go for 70-plus points. Yes, we know KD is a monster. He can go for 70-plus points. We've seen recently a 57 to 60-point game out of Donovan Mitchell. Those are not the same ceilings, and they don't get there as consistently as Harden gets to 80, right? Nobody on these other teams can get to 80 points, at least tonight, more often than Harden. I don't even know if anybody can really get to it based on the fact that the Warriors spread the ball around so much. Lou Williams has a ceiling, but it's more so in the 60s based on his minutes cap coming off the bench. So Harden at 10-4, I don't know how you don't 100% him here. Look, if you want to get leverage on people, there's only 2 things you can do tonight. You 100% James Harden, or you significantly go underweight on him and hope he does what he did last game, only getting 40 points, and then you hope the guys that you play instead of him, your Donovan Mitchells, your Stephs and your KDs go for 50 points or more, because even if Harden goes for 50 points tonight, which is the low end of what he should do in his realm of possibilities, although he just went for 40, so I guess that's his low end, but 50 is an under projection, right? I haven't projected for 60 today. Even if he goes for 50 points on this slate, he could be the highest scoring player, and that's pretty notable. You're going to need that. So for me, I 100% lock button James Harden tonight. It's a 2-game slate, so it makes a lot of sense to. But if you're somebody who in football, I'm somebody on these 2-game slates where I'm like, okay, I'm going to be getting 90% owned Leonard Fournette tonight in a tough matchup against the Titans on a 2-game slate. Yeah, I'll fade that. And then Leonard Fournette goes out there and he gets like 9 fantasy points and you don't need him at all. That's a situation where I like it. But James Harden, this is not football. This is basketball, where James Harden literally controls his own destiny. He pulls up, he shoots a 3. He drives to the lane, he gets free throws, he makes his layup. He gets steals. He's controlling his own destiny, whereas Leonard Fournette has to go up against an entire defensive scheme where James Harden could get double teamed, but we're not going to see that in the NBA, especially on a team with Chris Paul and Clint Capella. So lock button James Harden. It's going to make you have similar lineups to other people, just based on the fact that now you're going to have James Harden, and so will everybody else. But you can get different in different ways. The biggest way, leaving money on the table to get different. Leaving $500 or more, you will automatically start to have a more unique lineup. Chris Paul, I think going James Harden and Chris Paul in a 2-game slate, usually I would not advocate for it, because we saw Chris Paul had a ceiling game in the last one and James Harden had his floor game, and that's usually what's going to happen. They negatively correlate off each other. If Chris Paul is scoring a lot, that means James Harden's probably not, unless the game stays close. I think playing them both is fine, though, on a 2-game slate. I think it makes sense, or it makes more sense, too, because there's just less options, and it's a way to get a more unique lineup. And the randomness is going to be so high that you can embrace it a little bit better. I probably don't go there, though. There's some options that I like at the guard positions a little bit more, including James Harden. So it's going to be harder for me. I'm probably not going to get much Chris Paul, similar to how I won't get much KD. Guys who recently went off, I'm fine not getting to them today. PJ Tucker continues to be underpriced in this series. He's played 4 games now in the series, and he has gone for, I believe, 25 or more fantasy points in all 4. He's still $4,600. Price only comes up $100. I'm going to continue to ride PJ Tucker, although he is not this type of player. So it is the playoffs, so you would imagine intensity has come up. So maybe that is why he's producing a little bit more now. But he's hitting threes, corner threes. That's what he does. I continue to ride PJ Tucker at $4,600 over some of these secondary options, like a Pat Beverly for the Clippers, or even a Landry Shamet, things like that, or anybody on the bench for Golden State. So that's where I go there. Eric Gordon is still clearly in play. I will get some Eric Gordon here. I think going to Eric Gordon and PJ Tucker and James Harden, getting 3 guys on this starting team and 2 of them being on the lower end, I think it's fine. On a 2-game slate, it's fine. You're going to have your Harden ready. I think Tucker's safe, and then it pretty much just comes down to if Eric Gordon will get you his 25 points or not. Clint Capella on a slate like this, I think he's been very quiet as of late. Tough matchup individually against Rudy Gobert, the guy who's just the defensive player of the year pretty much at the center position. But overall fantasy points, they do give up a lot because their power forward position, especially right now, is significantly weak, and we'll get to that. So the strong interests are 100% lock button James Harden, at least for me. That's how I'm going to get my leverage. If he's going to only be 85, 90% owned, I will get my 100% and gain leverage on the field that way. And then I will go to PJ Tucker. Some interest in a Eric Gordon, won't get much. Chris Paul, I'm probably not going to get much of. Clint Capella, I'll see how my lineups turn out. I don't know what builds are looking like yet. If I have a lot of money left over for center, it's going to go to Clint Capella more times than not. The other thing I'll touch on is just tertiary options. $3,100 Austin Rivers. I have to mention him. I mentioned him at the jump. Guys who, there's like 25 of them who I have projected for 10 or more fantasy points today. He is one of them. He's been playing around either 17, 18, 21, 20. That's his minutes in this series so far. If he gets 20 minutes today, and he is the direct leverage off of James Harden. He's a point guard or shooting guard. He's coming off the bench. So if he's playing well, it might harm James Harden. But it also might just harm Chris Paul, or it also might just be he's running the second team unit pretty well in those minutes. It's a terrible matchup for him, even as running the second team. But there's not many guys right now that are $3,100 playing on average in this series 19 minutes. If you run him out there at $3,100 and he gets you 16 fantasy points tonight, I think you feel pretty good about that. And that's pretty bad, because this is a 2-game slate, and it's an NBA slate where on any other night, if there's 5 or 6 games and somebody gets you 16 points, you hate it. There is decent value on the slate in terms of the 4K range is pretty stacked with guys like, and we'll get to them, Jay Crowder, PJ Tucker, Eric Gordon, Pat Bev, guys who are reasonable plays on a 2-game slate. But I think if you really want to get different and you want to go down to a $3,100 Austin Rivers, it could pay off for you if he plays 19 minutes and gets 18 fantasy points, which is very much in his arsenal. He has to pretty much score 10 real points tonight. If he can do that, and he's probably projected to score like 5 or 6 or 4, somewhere in there. If he can do that, picks up 3 or 4 assists, he will get you around his 17 to 18 fantasy points, gets a steal. And at $3,100, not only does he now allow you to do a James Harden, Steph Curry, and add in a Rudy Gobert or a Donovan Mitchell type build, you have a different lineup because not a lot of people are going to want to go all the way down to $3,100. Rivers, he's one of the only guys I see in that range getting any significant run in terms of his minutes. I might play with it in terms of seeing where else I can get up to in my lineup. Because if you get to a spot where you're going to capture 4 guys who have 50-plus point upside and you have him in your lineup to do it, I kind of like that. Although your lineup lives or dies on him most likely. Utah side of the ball, Ricky Rubio is too cheap. He's continuing to play extremely well. He's had 2 40-plus point fantasy performances in this matchup. He continues to see low to mid-30s a minute, and his price comes down. It's a 2-game slate, so obviously the pricing is different to try and attract people off of him. $5,700 Ricky Rubio, very attractive for me. $4,300 Jay Crowder, coming off of a good game, going to have way too much ownership, but he's still attractive to me if he starts. I can't ignore him getting at least 24. I have him projected for 28 minutes today. You cannot ignore that at $4,300. Those are the 2 main pieces. Rudy Gobert at $6,800. It's just important to note he's been playing terrible in this series, so I imagine it gets people off of him. $6,800, I'll hop right on that. He has been playing bad. This has been a bad matchup for him. Backs up against the wall here, 3-1. Does Rudy Gobert come out and play? I have my money on he does. Donovan Mitchell. If I can get some Donovan Mitchell, I will. The problem will be I'm probably going to start most of my lineups with James Harden and Steph Curry. So if Donovan Mitchell gets in that lineup and I can build it out and feel confident, then I'll go there. I think he's a fine play. I just prefer those guards more than him. Joe Ingles is a guy who I have not been getting to. He has not been playing well at all. He can be a guy who is now significantly cheap, under 5K, and will be very low owned, who can go for a 35-point fantasy game today. He can shoot 4 of 6 from 3-point range tonight. I'm not going to go there. If he does it and he ruins my lineups, fine. So, quick recap. I do have an early interest listed, but we'll do what we did yesterday, and I'll just recap based on the target offense sheet. You see, it's pretty much everybody I just said. For Golden State, and I'll try and rank them again. It is 8:02 a.m. on the East Coast, so I'm going to try and rank these as best as I can. It is pretty much in order based on what I believe will be ownership, price, obviously upside, and things like that. It will be Steph Curry 1, Draymond Green number 2, KD 3, number 4, Andrew Bogut, and then you can fill in your Clays at 5, and number 6, even Kevon Looney. I do have some interest in Looney. I like Steph over KD, and the reason why is I think he'll have lower ownership, significantly lower ownership. He projects literally the exact same points tonight, 50.75 for me. 2 games ago, he got in foul trouble. He was playing great, 1.5 fantasy points per minute. He plays extremely well with no Boogie Cousins. The last game, he shot 1 of 9 from 3 and still scored 41 fantasy points. If he shoots 4 of 9 from 3, which is around his average, if not below it, then he's scoring over 50 fantasy points. So I think a lot of people are going to be just blinded by KD's past few games. And KD can go out there and score 50 points tonight, sure. But I think that this, in hindsight, is the better call based on ownership. Clippers side of the ball, I think keep an eye on JaMychal Green if he starts again, if he's going to get 22 to 24 minutes, especially since he's been bad and people will be off of him, hopefully. I think that I go there at his price point. Getting a starting center at that price point is very rare. Other than that, I like Lou Williams, number 1, Montrezl Harrell, 2, 3, Gallo, 4, JaMychal Green. Fill in the rest. I think SGA should also be somewhere in there. He's a little bit interesting as a point guard, although he has a brutal matchup. And the reason I like Gallo 3rd, I like him best in cash. If you're building a cash lineup, $6,300 Gallo is probably a staple of it tonight. He's too cheap and he's too reliable based on his minutes. But the fact that Harrell's minutes have been coming down, he's been playing bad, I'll try and hop on that and see if he gets his 30 minutes and 35 fantasy points tonight at a lower ownership. Lou Williams' ceiling is obviously always there. I'll try and build him into some lineups. Houston, 100% locked line on Harden. I'm going to fade a little bit more, play a lot less of Chris Paul today because of that. And similar to the reasons of KD, he's been playing well as of late, but there's players on his team who are also very good and have the capability of doing well tonight, which will harm him, i.e. James Harden. PJ Tucker, $4,600 is too cheap. If Clint Capella fits into my lineups based on how I build them out, he will be the center that I try and get to the most. But he likely does not get into those lineups. Eric Gordon is fine if you get there. I don't really have a take on him. And then $3,100 Austin Rivers is interesting to me. He's the only guy in that price range that I've found that is playing consistently in 4 games at least, right around 20 minutes. He's averaging 19 minutes in these 4 games. If he plays 19 minutes and gets you 7 points, I'm sorry, he's a bad player. He's a secondary backup player, but if he plays 19 minutes, and again, minutes equal money, their opportunities, their chances to actually score. If you're playing 5 minutes, you're not going to have no opportunities. 19, you have way more. If he plays 19 and gets you 16, 17 fantasy points, that might be enough, to be completely honest with you. If he gets you 19, plays 19 and gets you 22, that's definitely enough. Utah side of the ball, Ricky Rubio is my favorite option here at 5,700. He's been playing extremely well in this series, and his price has now come down. I'll take that. And then after that, it's just kind of a hodgepodge. I think $4,300 of Jay Crowder is going to be highly owned after his last game that was beneficial. But if he starts, I have him in at 28 minutes, and it's hard to ignore that at $4,300 on a slate like this. $6,800 Rudy Gobert is too cheap. Donovan Mitchell, if he fits into my lineups, I will get there as well. So that is it. Thank you guys so much. 2-game slate. Hope you enjoy it. Comment down below where you think Paul George will be next year. Hit me with a like button before you leave. If you watched the whole video, let me know that as well. My name's Sal. Best of luck, everybody, tonight. Peace out, gang.